The new Warframe update, Vallis Undermind, is just around the corner, and we have gotten some spicy new tidbits of information. For example, NOKKO, the new Warframe, received a buff before even being released. We got our eyes on one of the new augments, and finally we also got gameplay for the new Archgun, which looks very darn cool. So after a huge shout out to all our generous channel members, let's take a look at all of this. Now, first things first, NOKKO, the new Warframe, seems to have received a pre-release buff. Namely, when we're taking a look at the Warframe website, they already have the skill descriptions listed, just like they recently started doing with new Warframe releases. Also was the case for Arbucep, if you remember. But what we see right here, with his third skill, the one that turns you into your little fungus guy, previously, and also what they showed on devstream, you would turn into that sprawling, heal your health, and while you're in this form, NOKKO wouldn't be able to take damage. However, now they sneakily updated this by saying that not only are you spawning orbs that heal NOKKO, but now they also grant a speed boost at the same time. This, to me, sounds on the one hand potentially interesting, because if it were to, let's say, scale with ability strength and that speed boost can get really strong, then there might be a chance that NOKKO could be a nice frame for the quick in and out type of missions like capture, for example. However, then on the other hand again, from what we saw on the dev stream, it kind of looked like the third ability was not necessarily the most interesting one, because let's be real, an ability that's mainly there to heal you isn't all that necessary in 2025's environment, right? There are so many ways to stay alive nowadays, so I still sort of have the suspicion that the third one is going to be the one that we helmet off, and in that case, this little pre-release buff wouldn't really do all too much. Of course though, next week on Wednesday when NOKKO comes out, we're gonna take a full look at him, and naturally I will also try to have my day one guide out. Well, so much for that. Let's go on to our next topic, and this one is a bit less wishy-washy. Namely, we're now talking about the Arbucep, the new Archgun that is the signature of NOKKO. If we're thinking back to the dev stream, yes, they did show how it looks in-game, but they didn't show any gameplay. Now they have, as you also see this little 7-second clip in the background right here. Unfortunately, the quality is complete garbage because it is taken from Twitter, but I think we can still see what's going on here. The Arbucep seems to be a multi-rocket launcher, shooting 6 different projectiles, but the kicker is that, according to Pablo, what he posted on Twitter, for the 6 missiles that you fire, each one of them does a different combined element. So you're gonna have all 6 of them: magnetic, radiation, corrosive, gas, blast, and viral. This is absolutely crazy, and I think that will be the first weapon in the game that has 6 different innate status effects, correct me if I'm wrong on this, plus whatever singular element you mod or infuse onto it. For example, in this little clip here in the background, it's pretty obvious that they modded cold separately on the Arbucep, because in the top right corner you can see Arcane Ice Storm, I think it is, gaining procs as Pablo is shooting into the crowd. However, I see a little bit of an issue with this. See, while for most other weapons it will be absolutely amazing if they could just deal all 6 combined elements at the same time, for Archguns, there is this little issue that they do not have access to any type of condition overload mechanic, right? They don't have galvanized mods, and also nothing like galvanized aptitude where they would gain more damage per status effect on the enemy. So, in other words, if you don't specifically want to use the Arbucep as your primer weapon, right, then all those different elements that you inflict don't really do all too much for your personal damage. The only situation that I can think of right now where this would actually be very helpful would be the Profit Taker, because, for the Profit Taker you need to switch through your elements, and if you deal a lot of different elements, that is very convenient. However, we will have to test it once this comes out, because as far as I know, there is currently a situation where quite some AoE weapons can't even damage the Profit Taker, or at least the AoE part of the damage can't damage the Profit Taker. So, for the time being, we're just gonna keep the Arbucep in the back of our minds for the Profit Taker and then test if it's gonna work out next week. And then the last bit of information that we got is a showcase of one of the new augments that will come with this update too. From what I know, there's going to be a total of 4 new augments that are coming. However, for the other 3, we haven't gotten any information on that just yet. But yeah, the one that you're seeing in the background is a new augment for Xaku, to be more specific, for Xaku's 4, the Vast on Time. This one is called Untimed Rift, and what it does is, when you cast your 4, when you shed your skin outwards, it sheds a rift that connects to enemies that are suffering from void status effects within a 15-meter AoE, and it doubles the debuffs that you would usually apply with that 4th ability. Now, just as a quick recap, what this ability originally does to the enemy is, it slows their movement speed, and the slow is capped at a whopping 100%, for which originally you need 400% ability strength. However, I would suspect with this augment, this 100% slow might be reachable with much less ability strength. So what I'm thinking here is, if you build your Xaku into maximum range, which usually is what you do, then if that range also applies to the 15 meters from the augment, if that's not set in stone but actually moddable, then Xaku could become quite a bit more powerful for stationary defense type missions, because you would basically completely freeze all the enemies around you, or at least those without overguard, just by tapping your 4. And that's not even it, because one more thing that the 4 does is, it makes enemies more susceptible to void damage, aka to the damage that you deal with your little floaty guns. And also here, if the augment doubles this effect, then that means you can now deal more damage while sacrificing even more ability strength. And I think all in all, this might actually be quite the interesting augment. Of course, once it comes out, we're also going to take a look at it, we're going to check it out, so if you don't want to miss that day 1, you might want to consider maybe leaving the channel a sub. But yeah, let me know what you think about the new revelations in the comments down below. Another massive thank you to Niels V, Demon Lordsel, Demon Emperor, Emperor Prime, Nostednex Gaming, Turtle Pier, Ondakanio2, Skyla Bowser, Mihawki, Phil the Meme, Sokotes the Almighty Rat, Leo Murasaki, Shadow Lockhart, Hantares, Patrasator, Trollaloxen, Boomia1, Mr. Games Place, Zave, Awindai, and all other generous channel members for your continuous support. Wish you a great start into the weekend, and we see each other next week for the new update. Until then, as always, good loot.